Hello everyone, this is Rajarshi Palit, PGT Economics of JNV Birbhum. Today we are going to learn about the Indian economy on the eve of independence. This is the first chapter for class 12 in economics, the textbook Indian economy. Now before we start with this presentation, I would like to request all the students of class 12 who are going to appear in the AISSE examination this year that you should go through the textbook very thoroughly, because the textbook is the main reference to all the students who are taking the exam this year. The reference books may vary from person to person, but this textbook is a common resource material, and the questions which are being asked in the AISSE examination, those questions are mainly designed depending upon the material that is available in these textbooks. So I would like to request all the students that they should go through the textbook first, and then whatever reference books they want to refer to, they may do that in the latter stage. So let us continue with today's presentation. The learning objectives of today's presentations are that the learner will be able to describe the condition of Indian economy during the British period. Then the learner will be able to compare the condition of Indian economy then and now. That means what were the conditions that prevailed in India during the British rule, and what are the changes that we observe in the Indian economy today. Then the learner will be able to state the achievements made by India after independence. The learner will also be able to infer the reasons behind the stagnation of agriculture in India. That means that the students will be able to tell that why agriculture stagnated in India during the British period. And finally, the learner will be able to describe the conditions that prevailed in India during the British period before independence. Now, India before independence. The first thing that we have to know is that the structure of present day economy, Indian economy, is largely due to the colonial legacy. That means the policies that were followed during the British period, they have had their effect on the Indian economy after independence, and we still find that due to the policies that were followed by the British, there are the after effects of those policies till today. That during the British period, you will find that the sole purpose of the British colonial rule was to reduce India into a feeder economy for Great Britain's own rapidly expanding industries. As you all know that industrial revolution took place in Europe, so there was mass scale production, and in order to sell those goods, they needed additional market as well as they needed raw material. So that's why Indian economy was a very good place for the British, where they could get raw materials from very easily, and this was their captive market because they could sell anything and everything which they wished to sell in India. Next, before the British came to India, India was a manufacturing economy, particularly for its handicraft industry. We all know that the Indian economy before the British came was mainly known for the handicrafts. You might have heard of Dhakai muslin and various other types of handicrafts industry that was prevalent in India and were making a good share of international trade in the international market. Now, when the British came, their main aim was to promote the British goods in Indian economy so that their industries could flourish and they could get a captive market in India. Then the policies pursued by the British transformed India into a net importer of finished goods from being an exporter. Before the British came to India, India was an exporter of finished goods, mainly the manufacturing goods, spices, gems and jewelries. But once the British came, they deliberately ruined the domestic industries so that the things that were produced in Britain by the British industries could find a market in India. So when they came to India, in order to facilitate the expansion of their industries, in 1853 they started railways in our country, and it started from Bombay to Thane. Then in 1858, India first completed 200 miles of railway lines. Then in 1872, first British census was conducted in India. I have broken down the entire chapter into points because all of you know that uh, from now onwards there will be 20 marks of questions that will be of 1 mark and will be objective type. They may be multiple choice type, fill in the blanks. So it is important that we should learn these things in such a manner that those 20 marks can be secured easily. So that is why I have tried to break down the chapter into points which will help you. Now the next point, as I already told you, that India's share of the world economy was 23% in 1700. That means just before the British came to our country. And when they left India, you can see that when they left India, the share of India in the total international trade came down to only 3%. So you can imagine from this that what was the types of policies that were pursued by the British in India so that their interests could be served, and they never bothered about the conditions that were created due to their rule in India. Another uh, worthwhile incident that took place was in 1932. Tata Airlines was established. This was later converted into Air India. Next, the first individual attempt to the estimation of national and per capita income were made by Dadabhai Naoroji, VKRV Rao and RC Desai, among others. So these were the people who started the who made an attempt to calculate per capita income in India during the British period, because at that particular time the people of India were in a very bad condition. Poverty was prevailing mostly throughout the country, and we can say that 85% of Indian population was dependent on agriculture directly or indirectly. So you can very well imagine that the majority of the population of the country was dependent on primary sector. And to add to the miseries, the agricultural productivity was very low. Very low productivity was there. Although due to the increase in the total arable land, there was increase in absolute production. The area under cultivation was increased by the British during the British period. The next is Indian agriculture stagnated due to the land settlement introduced by the East India Company, particularly under the Zamindari system. The British, they promoted the Zamindari system in order to reduce their involvement in the administration, and they directly collected taxes from the Zamindars, who in turn pressurized their tenants, their subjects, for the collection of taxes. There was high yield of cash crops due to the commercialization of agriculture. This was one of the main reasons why people were very poor, because the British, they compelled the farmers to produce commercial crops, and these commercial crops were bought from the farmers at very low prices. So that is why the farmers, they could not invest in the improvement of agriculture. So India's agricultural productivity was further lowered by the partition of the country. Due to the partition of the country, a lot of area that was cultivating jute and other crops went to either Pakistan or Bangladesh. So that was also one of the major reasons why that Indian economy suffered during the British period. Next was the cotton and textile and iron industries started coming up in the second half of the 19th century. This was followed by The Tata Iron and Steel Company that was incorporated in 1907. The overall literacy rate was only 16%. You can imagine the condition of the country where only 16% of the people were literates. Now let us look at the life expectancy. You can see that it was only 32 years. Now we have a life expectancy of 68 years. So from this you can imagine the amount of achievements that we have made in our country after independence. Then agriculture accounted for the largest share of workforce, largest amount of people they were engaged in agriculture. Manufacturing sector contributed only 10% to the workforce. So to just recapitulate what we have learned is, let us see that during the British period, agriculture was stagnating, agriculture was highly commercialized, poor condition of economic and structural in the social infrastructure during the British period, highly skewed distribution of labor force, only 10% of labor was engaged in the manufacturing sector, lack of capital formation in agriculture, then foreign trade was aimed at feeding industrial revolution in Britain. That means whatever activities were carried out in the country by the British were mainly to serve the purpose of the British economy rather than for the betterment of the people of India. So here are some questions for you. You can go through the textbook and the points that I have compiled and try to write these questions. You are given a time of 35 minutes. You should use a stopwatch and within 35 minutes you should try to complete this test. Thank you, and I would like to thank my students, family and friends who have been a constant source of inspiration for me, and special thanks to the students of JNV Munger and JNV Birbhum who have motivated me to taking online classes during the period of lockdown. So thank you once again.